Okay, I see all of you actually, so that's good. And thanks, Brian. Brian, feel free to chime in as well. I see you're online. So my goal today is to make sure that you're in pretty good shape for the presentation for next week, because we didn't have to really time to go over this in any detail. This is the commercialization presentation. So my first question is, have you as a team have a chance to look at the instructions and work on it at all? Tell me what the current status is.
We've looked over the instructions.
Okay.
We have not begun working on it.
Okay, that's fine. That seems to be the case, which is not a problem. So Mike, so I want to spend the next 10-15 minutes kind of go through the sections and make sure that you have a good understanding of what I'm expecting and so on. So first of all, you have to do a class presentation next week, but also then there's a video pitch the next day. The video pitch is just an opportunity for you to really describe what you're doing in a very short video presentation. So I'm going to give you the freedom to do however you want it. Just don't make it very long. That's all. So we don't need to talk much about it unless you have questions. So for the first, you have to address each of these sections for the presentation. Section 1 is the elevator pitch. For this, essentially, I'm expecting a very, very short description of what you are trying to do. So I'm going to ask one of you to maybe give me an elevator pitch right now. And then we can talk about it briefly. So go ahead. Who wants to do it?
Sure, I can do it.
Is this Alex?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
The idea is place a series of light condensers on a roof. Those light condensers take in natural sunlight throughout the day, channel it into fiber optic cable, and distribute it throughout a building. This provides natural light. It provides light that fluctuates over time in a manner equivalent to the sun. It would increase mood. It wouldn't just be bland.
Okay.
LEDs and light bulbs. And it can save money, as light providing is a significant amount of the cost of running a building.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. So you started with your particular solution. So I would actually break it down a little bit differently. I would start with the problem. And this is a very common mistake as technologists and engineers. We love the technology, so we really want to emphasize that and bring it front and center. But most people, who are using this don't care, right? So think about it this way: if you are trying to pitch Uber, would you say, "Oh, I'm making this fantastic app where you can, call a taxi, makes it easier for you to get a taxi, whatever"? That's or describe the technical aspects of the app or whatever, or you're creating this number of drivers, this number. That's not what you do, right? You try to say, oh, if you are in the streets of New York City, it's tough to get a cab at certain times of day. You're trying to solve that one. So that's what I'm trying to say. So I would say you need to break this down to 3 parts. Is a good way to think about it. One is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And there you probably also want to convey what is the scale of this problem. Is this a big problem for a lot of people? Is it a small problem? And so on and so forth. So that's an important aspect. In your case, of course, in the case of this class, all the teams are addressing big problems, which is good. So it's easy. The second part of it is, how are you going to solve that problem? Which is the part you actually addressed. The third part here is, how is your solution the good way? It doesn't have to be the best way, but hopefully it is. It's a good way to solve that problem. So you really want to get the hook into the person listening to really convey, okay, it's a big problem. This is how you're going to solve it. And this is why your approach is the best way to solve it. Best or good way to solve it.
Okay.
And my recommendation here is write it down into 3 sentences, 2, 3, 4 sentences. And you're going to have to do it many times. You iterate it 3, 4 times, write it several times, and then say it loud, say it to each other, and then that will help you iterate through it and make it really, really clean seem, kind of smooth, very clear. You want to make it very, very clear. You don't want to make it. Yeah, Amartya, go ahead. Yeah, feel free to talk. Yeah, feel free to interrupt me if you have questions or suggestions. Chauncey and Amartya, anyone actually. Go ahead, Amartya. Were you going to say something? I don't hear him. You are still muted. So, okay. While he's unmuting, let's go to the next section, which is the go-to-market strategy. So
sorry, I was muted too.
Oh, go ahead, Chauncey. Yeah.
But I just have a question. You referenced the 4 sentences. I just wanted to be clear on, was that for the problem and the solution? Just the solution?
I'm just right now. I was just talking about the section 1.
Okay, so the entire elevator pitch should be down to about 4 sentences.
Yeah, think about it this way, right? You want to kind of, again, I'm giving you guidance. You don't treat this as absolute rules, right? If you want longer or shorter, it's fine. But think about it this way. You want to be able to convey what it is that you're doing in 60 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds, right? And if you want to do this clearly, it's really 3, 4, 5 sentences, right? Short sentences.
Okay.
And I'm just giving you some guidance on how to break it down. Don't treat them as rules. I'm just giving you suggestions. Let me see if I can unmute you. I can't unmute you, Amartya. So if you have suggestions, you can just put it on chat. I don't know why your audio doesn't work. So the section 2 is the go-to-market strategy. This really should, my suggestion is answer the questions that I posted here. They should come out of the canvas. So who are your customers? That means what are the customer segments? If you had some interviews with them, which you might have, then you have some voice of customer that you can include here, right? So, by the way, who are the customers? Chauncey or Alex, one of you.
Yes, mainly construction companies. There is the option of retrofitting buildings, but
Okay.
seeing as you
So you're looking at new constructions? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes, new construction.
Okay, makes sense. That's perfect. So that means you have a very specific customer segment, which is very good. Most people don't. So, then I would strongly recommend talking to someone who might know anything about it, if you haven't already. Whether it's your friends or family or just cold emailing people, that's another way to do it. But I would recommend doing that just so you learn a little bit about their viewpoint, which is of course very important here, right? Yeah, so that's basically this section. Are there any questions? You know what to do here, right? Do you have any questions or?
Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, good. So then let's move on. Now the market analysis sometimes can be a little bit complicated.
Oh, sorry. Amartya's question finally came through.
Oh, okay, let's read it. So instead of referring it as a big problem, we can refer it to a sustainable solution through renewable sources. We're not replacing technology, but we're modifying it for sustainable use of resources. Yes, that's perfectly fine too, Amartya. That's a good point. Yes, I agree with that comment. In fact, I would even say that the problem you're addressing is both big and, of course, green, just, sustainable, because it's big in the sense that if you look at commercial real estate in the US, I think something like 25% of energy usage comes from just buildings in the US, commercial buildings, which of course includes heat, not just light. So, it's a pretty significant number. So it's already quite big, I would say. So no need to, these are not exclusive. But coming back to this on the market, I think this is something you can do. Find out how many contractors are there, how many new constructions there are. If you're going after retrofits, that's a different segment. So you can figure out, okay, how many existing homes there are. But I would say one important comment I would make is don't just do like a cursory analysis. I expect you to at least spend like an hour kind of digging into it so you know and understand a little bit about the segments. What is happening to the segments? How big is it? Is it growing fast? If it's not growing fast, or if it's growing fast, why is it growing fast? If it's not growing fast, why not? And the growth is important because it will take 3, 4, 5 years to actually get something like this into the market typically, right? Tesla took what, 8 years to make a car. So, so you want to understand where the market is going. So really think about this. I expect you to spend, maybe an hour or so kind of researching the market and reading documents and so on. You can do Google searches, go to the library, ask the librarian. Of course, you don't have to physically go there. You can just call them up or email them. They can help you with these things. They're really, really good at the Marriott Library. They have research librarians who can help you. So those are the things I would recommend. Think about the incumbents. If there are, and clearly there are daylighting companies, think about, how would you position yourself against them, because they will also be selling to the same contractors, right? So to really think about how you differentiate yourself. Channel and partnership strategies comes out of the canvas. So I think that's pretty straightforward. Are there any questions about that? About this? Okay, good. Technical product, you guys are the experts, so I'm not gonna say much about this, except you can simply take your last presentation and summarize it into 1 or 2 slides. So that is not easy to do. Make sure you spend a little time trying to do this. 2 things I would highlight is product development risks. So think about, okay, what are the key risks factors? And this will come into the milestones I'll talk about in the next slide. And the last comment is the IP. If you have interesting IP, you may want to point that out. If not, it's fine. You can skip that. Now, the economics is probably the hardest part here, which is, as you probably heard in when I talked to the previous team, it has to do with the financial plan. I expect to see some minimal financial plan. Look at the articles I posted here. They're here. Read through them carefully. It'll take you maybe an hour or so to really understand it. It will take you 15 minutes to read it, so it won't take you very long, but really understand it and so on. And then put together an Excel sheet or a Google sheet to actually kind of work through these numbers. And you have to make guesses, which is fine. Just make some intelligent guesses. I just want you to be able to do it yourself, kind of think through this. Think about how to raise funding, what milestones will be required when you raise more funding. And this is important when you think about execution of a plan, right? So think about, okay, are you making progress on the specifications of your prototype? Are you looking at progress in the sales? There's a lot of ways to build these milestones. So think about them and come up with some rough plans. And I would say, if you want me to get on another Zoom call with your team, I'm happy to do it this week. Evenings are typically better for me. And if you want some feedback, you don't have to, but I'm happy to be available for you. Especially this part is a little complicated. Now, for the team itself, I think it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to skip that. You can use, you already know what to say there. So I think we're out of time. So any questions before we end at the daylighting team?
No.
So we just need to make sure that we interview someone somehow related to the construction field.
It's not necessary. It is necessary for the revised version of the canvas, by the way. So let's do it today. So I'm hoping you already did. If not, you should do it. For the next week presentation, if you don't have it, that's fine. But I would say just use this interview if you have them. It doesn't have to be customers. Anyone who can give you some intelligent feedback is fine. So it can be friends, family, whatever.
I thought the revised business canvas was due the 7th.
Oh, the 7th. You're right. Yeah, not due today. You're right. Absolutely right. My mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, it is correct on the website. Sorry, I'm confused with a lot of things here. Okay, great. And you guys are welcome to hang around. But if not, I would say use the time in the rest of the class. And Alex, all three of you, I know it's hard for you to meet. So this is your opportunity. You can make another Zoom room and start working on this presentation. So don't take off. Is that? I mean, you can take off if you want, but I strongly recommend you use the time. Okay.
All right.
All right. Sounds good. Let's see. Shunji, Bakar, Matt. I don't see Shunji. I see Bakar and Matt. Okay, Shunji's he's joining. Okay, perfect. I see you guys. Okay. So today, as you probably heard, my goal here is to make sure that you are in a good place to complete the commercialization plan. This is a little hard to do, so I want to make sure that this is something you have. And if you have any questions and so on, then I want to go through the sections with you. So first of all, what I expect is there is a class presentation on December 9th, and then there's a video pitch on the next day. The video pitch, I'm going to leave it up to you. You can really prepare whatever you want as long as it's not very long. But I gave you some.
What do we pick on the video pitch? Like related to the final presentation will be?
Sorry, Bakar, can you repeat? I didn't hear you.
For the video batch, will be related to the final presentation?
Yes. I would say, yeah, you can relate it to the final presentation, or it can just be an elevator pitch, but it's up to you what you want to do. I gave you some suggestions in the previous instructions slide. But what I want to do, so first of all, have you had a chance to go through these as a team and discuss, or not yet?
No, yeah.
Okay, so
I kind of looked over them on my own, but that's about it.
Okay, that's fine. So that's the goal today, is kind of go over them, I would say. And you have to go through each section and kind of build up on this. And most of the information will come from your Canvas. So the first section is the elevator pitch. Here, what I expect is very short description of what it is that you're doing. So I'm gonna, and when I say short, it should be like 30 to 60 seconds, something short. I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to give me an elevator pitch now. So one of you, doesn't matter who it is.
I guess I'll give it a go.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So 30, 60 seconds. All right. So basically what we are making is a solar cooker that can also maybe work when the sun isn't up. So it's going to have a attached battery and some solar panels that will be connected to a heating element so that it can be used in off hours or maybe on days that aren't as sunny for use for regular solar cookers. So we're hoping to be able to maybe sell this to disaster relief organizations in order to help cook food for people that need it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's reasonably good. And you make the, no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, everyone does this, even me, when I've done it. We make the mistake of starting with the technology,
Okay.
of what, which is fine. But I would say most people really don't care about your technology. They really care about the problem. So the way I would,
Okay.
so I have two recommendations, first of all, and this is what I told everybody, is one is write it down, 3, 4 sentences, 3, 4, 5 sentences, and iterate on it. So every time you do it, write it down, speak it out loud, iterate on it with your teammates, and that'll really, really help clean it up and improve it. And the second aspect is break it down into, my suggestion is break it into 3 sections. One is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Okay, in your case, okay, it is the inability to cook food once when there is no sunlight, if you don't have access to electricity, or whatever it is, right? Is you have to kind of come up with a clean, a simple way to explain what the problem is. If you can't, that's already kind of challenging. So you have to spend some time on it. It's not easy. And the second aspect of it is, okay, how are you solving the problem? Which is the part that I think you have it. You already explained it well. And the third aspect of it is explain why the way you are solving the problem is the best way or a good way to do it. And that's a little bit harder. It really comes out of the value proposition in your canvas.
Okay.
So problem, solution, and value proposition. Really kind of break it down this way. This is my recommendation.
Okay.
And practice, kind of do it. Now, by the way, I'm going to invite a bunch of people for your final presentation. So I want to also make sure that everyone does a great job. So that's the other
You're
reason.
giving us an audience. All right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Of course, don't worry about the audience. More importantly, I want you to think through it, right? That's the whole purpose of the class, is being able to do it yourself so you can learn from it, make your mistakes.
Yeah.
So second section is the go-to-market strategy. The vast majority of this should come out of the canvas. And so let me ask you, so I put these questions here because it will help you kind of think through it and answer them. But have you done it? Who are your customers from your revised canvas, let's say, or you're going to submit the revised canvas next week? But yeah. Nevertheless.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think we're still going for like disaster relief organizations and like maybe people who might have an interest in it. We might still have like a kind of a retail branch.
Yes, that's what we trust on.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So then that's important. So if you have 2 or more segments, make sure you very clearly explain them.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is, if you've done any discussions, any interviews with them or anyone related to them, it could be family or friends or whatever, or some cold emails, something to think about, include that. I know for the canvas, you have to do the interview, so you can use those as a voice of the customer if you have them.
Okay.
If you have not done it, you have to do it for the canvas, and you can just use that same information here. And the reason to do this is to understand their needs, right? If what you're proposing, does it make sense to them as a stakeholder or user or customer, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other part is, how will you acquire the customers? That really comes out of that section of the canvas on channels, right? So you already thought about this, I assume. So we can keep going. By the way, stop me if there are any questions.
I do have one question real quick,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
this
yeah.
might be a little more in depth than you're willing to get in right now for a
No,
short
we
session.
can. No, go ahead.
But you said like cold emails. So I
Yes.
feel like in my experience with cold emails, I hardly ever get a response back.
Yes, I agree.
So what would be something that you would suggest that has worked for you, maybe that would get more of a response on these cold emails?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, by the way. So two things I can recommend. One is get an introduction. This is the best approach, right? Get an introduction from someone so it's not so cold. It's
Okay.
somewhat warm. That would be the best option. And, if you want a great way to get an introduction, is look on LinkedIn, right? That's the best way. So I actually sometimes, not always, answer cold messages on LinkedIn if they are interesting. I do read them. So
Okay.
you could message on LinkedIn and as a student, it's relatively easy for you to actually access people. You'll be surprised as a student. You can just say, "Oh, I'm a student at the Department of Electrical Engineering at the University of Utah, doing this or whatever, doing this class project. I'm interested in talking to you about this particular industry or technology or whatever," and you'll be surprised at how many people will respond.
Okay. I guess I got to beef up my LinkedIn. It's a little sad right now, but we got to do that.
That's fine. I was not on LinkedIn until about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm not on any social media, so except that, I guess. But anyway, yeah. I mean, but if you're not, I'm sure some of your other teammates might be. So that's one option. Okay. The other option is just ask. You don't need to necessarily find experts. You can talk to your friends, family. I mean, there might be people who have some experience in this field. Who work with NGOs, whatever, nonprofits. So you may want to ask around in your network. I don't know, Facebook friends, whatever.
All right.
Yeah, it's not easy, by the way. No, definitely not easy. In my experience, those are the two things that I've worked: getting an introduction or messaging on LinkedIn.
All right. I'll probably go the LinkedIn route. That seems the easiest one to do.
Yeah, you can also ask, if you know, like for instance, if you know someone that you want me to introduce you, I might know them. You feel free to ask me or ask other professors, whoever they know. So as a student, you remember you have access to lots of resources that most people don't. So you can take advantage of that.
Okay.
Libraries are the other option. Okay, so coming to the market, you mentioned NGOs and disaster relief organizations. So here you want to really dig in on what the market is, what the segments are. If it's FEMA, for instance, think about, okay, how much money does FEMA spend on these kinds of, whether it's disaster relief, but that's not enough. You need to dig in a little bit more into, cooking, temporary housing, for instance. So really need to dig into what you're displacing, right? Or if so I don't expect, I don't want you to just do a cursory look at the market. I expect you to spend about at least an hour kind of digging. You can do a top-down analysis on what I just said, look at FEMA, how much they're spending on different things and what is most appropriate for you, and do it for a few other big countries, United Nations, whatever. The second thing you can do is a bottom-up analysis. Think about, okay, how many disasters occur every year, how many require this kind of system installations, what are the amounts of money, and then build it up, what is the price per installation that's installed, and bring it up from the top, bottom up, sorry. And I don't expect you to do this by yourself. You can do Google searches, but you can also reach out to the Marriott Library. They have a fantastic research librarian who can help you with a lot of this stuff. And you don't need to be there in person. You can email them, do a Zoom session, and so on. But I would strongly recommend doing this sooner than later because they get pretty busy towards the end of the semester. Yeah, the other things I would point out are, okay, is the market growing? And if it's fast, why is it fast? So some understanding of the market dynamics. If it's not growing, why not? If it's too slow, okay, what are the reasons for that? Is that something you can affect? So just understanding it and making it clear that you've thought through is all I'm looking for. Okay. Think about who are the existing companies that exist there, and what are your strategies that you might, someone might choose your approach versus some other approach. That comes out of the value proposition, but really kind of distill it in the context of your competition. The channel and partnership strategy really comes out of the canvas. I think you should have already thought about this or will be thinking about this as part of your next set of next assignment. So any questions about this before we move on?
No.
Okay. This again, I expect you to spend about an hour at least, a little bit more sometimes. It's just not easy to do. So make sure you allocate some time for it. The section on technical product description is relatively straightforward. I would say, you already know what to do. So I'm not, take your last presentation and summarize it into 2 slides or something like that, 1 or 2 slides, really. So that takes a little bit of effort, but that's what you need to do. Here I would highlight, think about product development risks, and how you mitigate them. What are the key risk factors when you try to actually implement this, and what are your strategies to mitigate them? And finally, if you have anything to talk about IP, that's a good place to do it, but you don't have to. Just it's an optional thing. Finally, the last thing is the last thing is the team, but that's easy, so I'm going to skip that. The economics is probably the most challenging thing in all of this, and it's challenging for us because we are not accountants. I expect to see a simple financial plan. I hate doing this. I've done this many times. I really hate doing this, by the way. I'd rather pay someone to do it. But here of course, you have to do it yourself because I want you to experience what it really means. Sometimes, some of you might find it very easy, but I found it really hard for myself. So I posted a couple of articles here. You should read through them carefully. This will take you 15 minutes to read through. But thinking through, it'll probably take you about an hour. Okay, so you should be able to prepare a Google Excel sheet or a Google sheet or something like that as a very simple template, revenue, costs, profit and loss, even something really simple like that over 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Something very simple, but really you should invest a little bit of time, about an hour or so on this as well. On the fundraising side, I would think about, okay, how you're going to raise money, but also what are the milestones that will be expected from the raise, and also what will be the milestones expected of future raises. So really just think through the plan a little bit, in a little bit more granularity than just say, I'm going to raise $5 million or whatever. I expect a little bit more granularity. It could be improvements of the specifications of your prototype. It could be sales of units. Okay, I'm going to deploy 10 units this year, 100 units next year, whatever it is. And you have to make some intelligent guesses here, which is perfectly fine. And as I said to the previous teams, I'm happy to be on a separate Zoom call to go over these things later on if needed this week. Just message me on Slack. I'm happy to make myself available.
Okay.
And that's basically it. So we are a little past our time, but are you guys okay? We move on?
I'm good. I mostly just wanted to know about cold emailing people, but
okay, good. That was a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, make sure you meet as a team over Zoom because it's important to think through these together. Okay. Yeah, Shinji, do you have a question?
No, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, see you guys. All right.
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew. I see Andrew and Jared. Is you? Oh yeah, Yusuf's here too. Great. Okay. Yeah, great. So what I want to do today is just to make sure that you're in a good shape to address this commercialization assignment for next week, because we didn't have a lot of time to go through this. So really, I would just want to go over the sections. So first, have you had a chance to look at the instructions? Have you made any progress on this? What's the status right now?
We just met before this meeting, and we just kind of talked about it, divvied up the tasks. We gave each task two tasks per person. And Wonderful. That's all we've done.
Okay, no, that's perfect. That's very good. Okay, so I want to go over each section so you kind of know what I'm expecting. So we have the class presentation next week, and then the video pitch the day after. So the video pitch, you can really do whatever you want. You can really make it a demo, make it a cartoon, whatever you want. But really, you have to make a pitch for your idea, your innovation. Just make it short. So I'm not giving you too many guidelines here, but you can just take your final presentation and turn it into a short pitch as well. So the first section is a brief elevator pitch. This really is just short, like 30, 60 seconds, description of what you're doing. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask one of you to give me an elevator pitch now. So whoever.
I'll do it.
Andrew? Okay. Who's this? Andrew?
This is Jared.
Oh, Jared. Okay, go ahead, Jared.
Okay. A big problem with natural disasters is the need for water in an unexpected environment. So we've come up with a modular, flexible, durable piece of equipment that can give you a large amount of fresh water from dirty water, making it drinkable.
Okay,
that's it.
That's very good. Yeah, actually, you did a pretty good job compared to what most teams, I would say. So you started with the problem, which is good. That's what I was going to say. So I have three suggestions, I would say. Number one, I would say write it down, 3 or 4 sentences, and iterate on it. So write it down, share it with your team. Each of you make your suggestions, then write it again, iterate on it. Suggestion number 2. Say it out loud to your teammates or whoever, and do it a few times, and you will see things that flow well, things that don't flow well, and make the changes. Number 3, third suggestion is break it into smaller pieces. And this is how I would do it. And I think you did something pretty similar. One is identify the problem. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And hopefully that problem is big. If you can convey that it's a big and important problem, that's good. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is what is your solution to that problem? Okay, which I think is relatively easy for you because you know what you're doing. And the third part of it is, why is your solution the best way to solve that problem? So that's a little bit harder, but it really comes out of the value proposition part of your canvas. So kind of extract it from the canvas and put it all together. This is my suggestion.
Nice. Okay.
Now, on the second section on the go-to-market strategy, again, this should really come out of the canvas. So hopefully you already have a good idea. So first of all, you can really just go through and answer these questions and put them into some format that conveys that information in a slide or two. Really, you can't spend a lot of time, obviously. So who are your customers from your canvas so far?
Yeah, so we primarily see organizations like the Red Cross or FEMA, potentially UN organizations that deal with disaster relief as our principal customers. However, we can see this having applications in military operations as well, especially in remote areas. And so our primary, I guess, like goal for how we were going to get to market, I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but was that we were going to at first look for SBIR grants. That would be kind of our initial funding source. And then we would attempt to form contracts, either in fulfillment or like leasing contracts with military branches or the Red Cross or FEMA.
Okay, I think that's really good. That's coming down to here onto the economics. How will you raise funding and what milestone? We'll come to that, but that's good. I'm glad you thought through it. Here, really, you want to focus on the customers, like who will actually pay for it, not the investment or the grants. I mean, those are really fundraising, right? That's not revenue per se. Although at the end of the day, it's all money, so you don't care. But here it's really people who will use your product. So think about it from the perspective of the FEMA buying your, tool, product, whatever it is. So here, if you can do some interviews with possible stakeholders, whether it's people from FEMA or people you could get access through, through your friends network or family or whatever, I would strongly recommend you do this. And you're expected to do this for the second version of the canvas. So from that, you can extract some sort of a voice of a customer a narrative for this section. So I would strongly recommend you do this. And one of the questions of the previous, and my suggestion was to use, cold emails, for instance, if you don't know anyone, or you can get introductions from people or message on LinkedIn and so on. So you can reach out to folks to get some information like that. And that was a question from the previous team. How will you, and that's really how you validate their needs. You really want to understand, okay, what you're proposing, does it make sense to them, right? Is it something that they are thinking about? If not, what do they think of it? So that kind of feedback is very important, because it might affect your technical design as well. How will you acquire the customers? That comes out of the canvas. So I think you already thought about this, but kind of distill that information into a slide here. On the market industry analysis, this is a little bit more complex, where I expect you to do like a top-down and a bottom-up analysis. So the top-down analysis, what does that mean? That means, okay, how many disaster relief organizations are there in the world? Okay, there's so many. And for each of them, how much do they spend on water systems? Kind of dig down, and then how much do they spend per year on these kinds of disasters, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So kind of dig down. That would be the top down. Now bottom up could be, okay, how many disasters occur in the world? How many of them require deployment of water, and how much do each of these systems cost, what's the scale, and kind of build up from the bottom up. So top down and bottom up is good ways to analyze the scale of the market. It gives you more confidence if they match up somewhat. They typically don't match up, so that's okay, but at least you have thought through it. You can do this kind of research using Google, of course, but also reach out to the librarian at Marriott. They're extremely helpful. You can email them, set up Zoom appointments, and explain to them what you're trying to do and ask them to help you. I expect you to do something more than just a cursory analysis. So don't just leave it as, okay, there's 150 disaster relief organizations, each of them will spend, I don't know, $10 million a year. So I expect you to go a little bit deeper than this, a little bit more information. Is the market growing? How fast is it growing? And why is it growing fast? If it's growing fast, if not, why not, right? Just try to understand the dynamics a little bit better. This just means reading some articles. I don't expect you to spend more than about an hour or so on this. So really, if you break up the task, it should be relatively easy for one of you to actually address this. Think about who are the incumbents. How would you displace them? How do you compare yourself to them? I think you've already done this. So it's something you can kind of, for your canvas, dig a little bit deeper and extract that information. What's your channel partnership strategy? This comes from the canvas, of course. Any questions about this?
Not for me.
No.
Okay.
I think I'm good.
The technical product description, I think, is easy for you because you already done this. My suggestion is take your last presentation and summarize it into one or two slides or so. So keep it really clean and clear what your innovation is. Two things I would highlight are product development risks. So as you think about developing this into a product, what are the key risk factors and how will you mitigate them? It could be technical. Let's just focus on technical for now. So don't worry about the financial risks at this point. And also, if you have any IP you want to highlight, you may not. So it's okay. It's optional. This last section is probably the hardest part, which is simple economics, very simple financial plan. Some of you heard this before, but I posted 2 articles here, so make sure you read through them carefully and prepare like an Excel sheet or a Google sheet. And this will take some time, so I would plan on spending about an hour on this. If you need some help or feedback from me, I can get on a separate Zoom call to do that later on. The last part here, how will you raise funding? I think Andrew also already mentioned some aspects there. Think also about what are the milestones that will be needed. Now, particularly with respect to the military, I would also recommend looking at the Army. Army has several programs for these forward operating bases. So if you have experience with those, they have interesting funding opportunities where these things can be done. Particularly in terms of renewable energy and so on, the FOBs, they don't have access to electricity and water and so on. So they would have an interest in funding these kinds of technologies, something to look into as well. And I think you mentioned that, but and that's all I have. So let's see. Any questions before we end?
You didn't mention anything about the 6th point.
Oh, the team, yes.
Is it just as easy as it sounds? Just write a few things?
Yeah. I think that this is important when you are pitching to someone who is completely new. Since I kind of know who you all are, it's not so critical. But I would say think about it and do the best you can. But I kind of skipped it for now. But yeah, okay. You do need to do it when you go out into the real world. So I would say don't ignore it.
Okay. And we need to.
And then the other reason I kind of skipped it is because your teams were assigned somewhat arbitrarily. So it's not in the real world that it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes it does, of course. So you have to kind of, I would say, let me take that back. In the real world, I think a lot of times you have to mold yourself to fit, explain, not necessarily why you are the best for the company. You have to mold yourself to be the best for the company, if you know what I mean. Because these things happen by accident, right? How you start a company and so on. A lot of times.
Huh, okay.
So it's a challenge. So, but yeah, give it a shot. So I would say, you can assign this to someone, that's fine, but that would be the easiest part. So make sure you assign some other task to them as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. If there are no
Thanks.
questions, yeah, send me a message if there are any questions or if you want to discuss. Thanks.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Professor.
All right. Brian, do you have any questions or comments before we end? I know you're muted and you said you will be muted, so I'm going to take that as a no. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks.
No, I don't have any questions. I think, Professor, I listened to the other groups, and I think that helps me understand what the expectations are.
Yeah.
I think the only key question I might have is if there's anything different you would expect from our group, since we're, I guess, entirely remote.
No, nothing at all, actually. So there's no difference. I would expect the same, because most
Okay.
of what most people are doing is remote.
Okay.
I mean, very few teams are actually meeting in person, in my opinion, for good
Okay.
reason. So,
Yeah, so I think that with the descriptions you provided the other groups, I can communicate with Fabian and Saeed for our group.
Perfect.
If we have questions, we'll reach back out to you.
yeah. I was also going to say, yeah, I'm happy to get on a Zoom session if you want, but I really liked your submission so far. So I'm expecting even better. So,
Okay.
Very
Okay,
good.
well, thank you.
thanks, Brian. Take care. Thanks, Ikata. See you all on Thursday. Bye.
Bye.